multiplicity. And they're part of the multiplicity without the multiple heroic acts. So these acts are part of these objects, such as atmospheres or lawscapes. I have a real problem with thinking about the human agency as the main agency because it goes back to Enlightenment metaphysics. I'm trying to understand the ontology and I'm trying to understand the political responsibility as diffused and having to do with spatial positioning, how close you are to where decisions are taken, how complicit you are to these decisions. And the truth is, there is no behind. Not only that there is no one behind, but there is no behind. Everything happens, everything is accessible. I mean, Panama Papers are accessible. We got them. There are links everywhere. We got, so what? So what? We got them. It's fine. Yeah, okay, we know, there are people who manage to hide these facts, who kind of, diffuse the responsibility for it. Yes, and so we are complicit to it. Because some of us have Panama Papers. Because it's easy, because it's legal, it's part of the lawscape, right? It's not bad, it's not. So we're talking about complex things. We don't need a behind. The thing is so complex anyway, but not impenetrable at the same time. It is complex, sure, it has its own causality, and it has, in a way, not a will, but it has an agency. And I'm interested in the agency of the lawscape, I'm interested in the agency of the atmosphere that includes, but is not limited to human agency.
Duyuyorsunuz arkadaşlar değil mi?
Duyuyoruz, evet.
Tamam. Ben çok old school bir romancıyım ve bu görselden çok hoşlandım. Yani görseller gezisinden. Çalışıyor mu? Harika, tamam. Tamam, sürekli konuşmam gerekiyor. Sürekli konuşmak zorundaymışım. Yoksa mikrofon kapanıyormuş. Ben öğrencilere roman anlatmaya çalışırken çok zorlanıyorum ve sürekli setler, kümeler falan çizmeye çalışıyorum. Bir seferinde screensaver'ları kullanmak zorunda kaldım. Ne dediğimi anlatmak için kapanmasın ekran diye. Teşekkür ederim bu arada, yani size çok inspiring olduğu için çok. Sadece bir şey takip edemediğimi sanıyorum konuşmanızda, meraktan soruyorum. Semantik bir şey değil ama entropi nerede? Entropi. Yani bütün bu dalgalanma içerisinde bunun yeri olması gerekiyor gibi.
Okay. Yeah. May I answer in English? Yeah, well, I don't have a choice. Yeah, exactly. Güle. I take your answer, your question, and I like it very much. But there's one way. There are two ways of answering. The first one is on the Luhmann level. There is no entropy. In Luhmann, there doesn't have, because it's not a feedback mechanism. It's not a loop. There's no excess. But entropy. But I am Luhmannian, but I'm not. And the kind of entropy that I use here is in the form of excess. So it's an excess, it's a thing that comes out and keeps on releasing, as it were, this affective energy and linking body with each other. Entropy, of course, is a negative term in the sense that it points to the self-demolition of the system. So the system, when it keeps on releasing whatever keeps on being active, it eventually collapses because of too much entropy if there is no feedback mechanism. At the same time, the interesting thing about closed systems is that they never willingly commit suicide. They never, and this is why Luhmann is a Spinoza, in that without him knowing, they never kill themselves. The main thing of atmospherics, just as the lawscape, the conatus. And conatus, for Spinoza, is this drive to carry on existing. So the cognitive ability of these bodies, these objects, to carry on existing. If we were to accept entropy, and I'm happy to accept and discuss on that level, they include entropy into their own self-perpetuation. So, an entropic moment of an atmosphere, say a comfortable atmosphere, or an atmosphere of certain agreement, let's say, would be a moment of disagreement, a moment where somebody says something different or does something different. Cleverly engineered atmospheres, and I'm thinking, for example, Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany are the perfect example of perfectly engineered atmospheres, affectively complete, aesthetically perfect. What they did is they included the dissent within the system. So the way that they progressively started including the various dissenting groups into the system, into the mechanism, and at the same time visibilizing the threat of the Jew, for example, or the threat of the gypsy, or the threat of the homosexual in that mechanism. That was the use of the entropy for the perpetuation of atmosphere. So I think we successfully engineered, successfully is a strange term, but successfully engineered atmospheres are very difficult even to withdraw from. Because even if we were to withdraw from the atmosphere, that would be part of the entropy of the atmosphere. But the atmosphere for its perpetuation might want our withdrawal. It's not easy, but
geri çekilme kavramı aslında biraz her ne kadar hukuki bir bağlamda tartışmasalar da Antonio Negri ve Michael Hart'ın Exodus, toplu göç ya da toplu terk kavramından biraz bana. Ama son yani Avrupa'nın son halini gördüğümüzde göç meselesi bağlamında aslında bu toplu terkin ya da geri çekilmenin hiç de devrimci bir pozisyonu olmadığını gördüm. Örneğin Macaristan Başbakanı en son çıkıp Avrupa'daki krizin tek çözümünün Macar çözümü olduğunu söyledi. Mesela 1993'de en son bununla ilgili bir yazı yayınlandı. Ve orada bu Macar çözümünün göçmenleri durdurmaktan, yani hukuki olarak belli barajlar koymaktan, engeller oluşturmaktan ve onları hukuki yollarla durdurmaktan geçtiğini söyledi. Yani bu geri çekilmenin kendisi niçin pozitif bir güce işaret etsin? Ben buradan tam emin olamıyorum. Biraz sizin yorumunuzu merak ediyorum. Teşekkürler.
Thank you, absolutely. Thank you so much. No term from ones I use have either exclusively positive or exclusively negative connotation. Even spatial justice has the potential of freezing and remaining the same and leading to atmospheres. Atmospheres are potentially both comfortable and ruptured like needed, or problematic because they lead to exactly the same thing with withdrawal. Withdrawal is just a mechanism, and a mechanism that can be used exactly as you said. Hungary, in some sense, has withdrawn from the European project by closing out the boundaries. There are some ways of answering that. One way would be to say, well, there's good withdrawal and bad withdrawal, and there's kind of good ways of withdrawing and bad ways of withdrawing. But that's not true, unfortunately. And that's the interesting thing. I mean, to speak politics, Angela Merkel withdrew from a European desire to stop, sort of a general European desire to stop the refugees from coming by inviting the 1 million, famously the 1 million refugees into Germany. And then she withdrew again from that by allowing the German comedian to reach the courts. So the problem with withdrawal is that, or just like with every, you know, we are in an era where standard philosophical and moral notions can no longer be entertained as universal. This is not cultural relativism, but it simply means that everything is potentially and actually co-opted. Everything becomes easily part of the system. And we are easily complicit with the system, with or without realizing. I think it is on this level that we have to think about political responsibility and withdrawal. It is on the level of all the actions that we do, all the kind of stuff that we follow without even thinking about it, how they perennially and constantly co-opted by whatever it is that we want to call the system. And then think about where is the system and whether the system is us as well. So this is unfortunately the rather bleak, again, lawscape. To go back to the specifics of withdrawal, Negri and Hart's understanding of withdrawal has to do with a collectivity, a revolutionary collectivity that they call the multitudes. And it deals with very specific moments of withdrawal. The kind of withdrawal I'm using is, first of all, it's a Heideggerian withdrawal. That is, it's an ontological withdrawal of the object from presenting itself ontologically fully to us. This means that nothing is fully present and fully accessible. There's always a part, a thing, indeed the very center of it, the kanatas of whatever the body is, that withdraws. So this withdrawal is an ontological condition of every single object. At the same time, though, this withdrawal can be organized politically if one rides a certain wave. But again, not of multitude, but of multiplicity. The problem with multitudes is that it deals numerically, quantitatively. The interesting thing of replacing, going back to the original Deleuzean understanding of multiplicity, is that you look at the qualitative differences. So withdrawal becomes much harder when everyone goes in different directions, when we cannot communicate in the same language, when we are not part of the same group or whatever it is, but we just simply move away from atmospherics. And that is the hardest thing. That is where traditional politics fail, because we cannot be organized now. You know, the kind of traditional left is observing its demise with gluttony. It's terrible what's happening to the left now everywhere. And the problem is not that it's not getting organized in solidarity, it's that it cannot accept the multiplicity and how to deal with multiplicity, and how indeed to withdraw from this idea of solidarity as a unifying factor. So, am I making myself clear? So, withdrawal is not a traditional movement of a united front moving away and tearing the parapet. It's a multiplicity of displacement away, sometimes even in panic from what is happening. But this might have an effect of reorienting the lawscape.
For the presentation. I have three questions. The first one is really about elaboration of the concept you used. You talked about fractal structures within this atmosphere. Can you explain a bit why they are fractal? It's a more technical question. The second one is, you were right actually, I prefer to pick up the Deleuzean bits in your presentation rather than the others. And I also very much like the way you use the Latourian ontology to make sense of the current contemporary nature of capitalism. But my question is, how would this analysis of human and non-human objects, the assemblage, would reflect on our understanding of revolutionary agency. In other words, if we understand the current reality is made up of an assemblage consisting of human beings, non-human objects, and different technologies, how this type of agencement would affect our own understanding of revolutionary agency. And the third one will be about the concept of low space that you used. Would it be possible to expand the concept again in our fight for radical transformations? For instance, I've been working for a while with groups of workers to intellectually work on some legal documents, contracts, which will regulate their relationship with their employers and also their relationship with each other. You know, all those social norms, trust, etc., solidarity. And I can see how intellectually empowering for them to think about a new legal framework that they can create on their own. Could we argue that we could build different forms of low spaces against the one which are imposed and which we actually reproduce, as you were saying, as being complicit in it?
Lovely. Thank you. Excellent. So let me talk fractal and lawscape a little bit together, and then I'll so fractality is my take on the geographical concept of scales. Scale is one of nested scales in geography, which is all about different layers of the same thing appearing in various contexts, and therefore somehow changing, some are being affected by the context, etc. The way that I'm interested in fractal is, maybe I need to explain the visual behind a fractal. Fractal is this idea of a pattern that repeats itself however much you zoom into an image. So say you see something that looks a little bit like Norway's coast, full of fjords coming in, etc. So you zoom in and you see in a smaller parcel of the map the same similar pattern. And then you go into the very bit where you zoom into the beach and you see again the similar pattern of the waves onto the sand. So fractality means that the same pattern repeats itself on various levels. So however much you zoom in, you see the same pattern. The fractal, in terms of the lawscape, is that there are various lawscapes, different fractal manifestations of the lawscape, depending on how you zoom in. But at the same time, and that's the difference between this and scale, that there is one lawscape. And that's the Deleuze and Spinoza say, that there is a multiplicity, but at the same time there is an immanence that includes all lawscapes. And that this all lawscapes is the lawscape. And the lawscape is the kind of, the kind of legal spatial tautology with which we are complicit. The interesting thing about the lawscape is that it tends to invisibilize itself. So exactly what you said, the example that you made with the people that you're working, the workers that you're working with, and you're trying to work with them in order to understand a potentially different articulation of the lawscape, and how you said that it's intellectually very rewarding and empowering to do that. That's exactly the first step of the lawscape. What I do with my students is that I take them, we do bizarre, strange things with my students. And one of the strange things we do is the walks. So we walk the lawscape. And we just come out of the classroom and we walk around and we have the various levels of the lawscape. I ask them first of all to see the signs. We're in central London. So you come out and I ask them to see the signs. This is the first level of the lawscape. Turn right, turn left, stop, priority, blah, blah, blah. Then I ask them to see other things that are not linguistic, such as the distinction between the pavement and the road. Why they keep on the pavement? There is, here in London, right? We're not in Istanbul. We keep to the pavement. So why we keep on the pavement and why not on the road? So what are the cultural factors that come in and necessitate this distinction? And also, the third thing is, why is it that these bodies self-police? What is it that make us cross from the zebra crossing? The actual crossing. What is the... I came across the lawscape, I actually encountered the lawscape and the term when I was cycling in the city of in London. London is a crazy city, and you need to be, cycling in London is a bit of an adrenaline trip. You have to be quite, so cycling, and also. So I indicate, I do things, I go like that, I try to keep on wherever it is. I'm trying to be quite, I'm becoming almost legalistic. Space becomes law, really. And I indicate when I'm turning right and left. The moment that I realize that the lawscape is eating me alive is when I was cycling in a park. There was no one around. There were only pigeons. And I indicated that I was turning right to the pigeons. I mean, surely that's wrong. But then, this is exactly how the lawscape enters you. You don't even realize that there's a need to do that, so you just do it without thinking. So, as you say, I think the first step of the lawscape is the understanding of its existence and the way that we're complicit to it. And this allows for... Okay, I don't very much believe in revolution. I don't think the revolution is all that we say it is. And revolution is probably the last cudgel of the old semantics. Because we know what happens with revolutions. Revolutions have their atmosphere, after which you move to the next bourgeois atmosphere. Whatever the atmosphere is. We know that revolutions are potential moments of grace. I mean, I'm thinking of Tahrir Square, for example, where there was this and generally squares, Eyal Weizman has done this excellent work on squares, on ways in which things converge and happen in a particular space, and how revolutions often start from circles, Bastille, Tahrir Square, etc. And how these things are just simply questions to the atmospherics, rupture the atmospherics for a second, and have the potential of reorienting the lawscape. But inevitably, and that's how it is, and we have to accept that and start thinking otherwise, inevitably they freeze into new but similar atmospheres. And that's what revolutions are about. They are a passage to a new atmosphere. And that's how it is. So we can deify, we can make a god out of revolutions. Why? We have to think a little bit laterally. We have to understand what revolutionary politics exactly is and how we define revolutionary politics. Is it shouting? Is it organizing? Or is it something else, perhaps? And I think what you said about the intellectually empowering thing, to me, that's perhaps the most important thing. And it's a kind of a way of understanding our complicity with what is happening, and a way of withdrawing precisely from this complicity. And the way of withdrawing from this complicity is by also becoming aware of this assemblage, of the human, non-human assemblage. So, there's so much work. Our translator has been doing some work on social media and ideas of local revolutions. The role of social media is obviously particularly important, but social media is just one level, and indeed is the post-human extension. So there's nothing new there. But there are other things. There's kind of ways in which art moves and constructs space. There's ways in which the post-human understanding of the spatial order of the square in which the revolution is taking place has to do with needs that are outside the human. So it has to do with what we call animal needs, or the ideas of where the toilets are. We did a study on the Occupy St. Paul movement in London. It was part of the Occupy movement, and the Occupy St. Paul was when the occupiers were occupying the space right in front of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And what we tried to do is map the various affects that were circulating in that space. So affects of ideology, of ideas, of interests, but at the same time affects of the police, affects of the City of London and the businesses, but also affects of God, and affects of the need to go to the toilet, or affects to keep the corridors separately, affects of the cold and the weather conditions that were coming in, affects that determine the various codes of contact within that square. I don't know whether you know that when people were leaving the tents, they had a peg code. So they would put a little peg depending on whether they were coming back or not. So it was a yellow peg if they were coming back in the evening, a red peg if they're just there around for an hour or something like that. Don't use that. A green peg if I've gone to my mother for a shower, and please use that tent and sleep here. So these are, in a way, distinctly human stuff, but also post-human. I mean, does Batman go to the toilet? A human Batman, you know, a heroic human Batman doesn't go to the toilet. A post-human Batman goes to the toilet. Does this make sense?
Çok teşekkür ederim sunumunuz için. Birkaç şeyle ilgili bir sorum olacak ama ilk başta tespitinizden hareket edeceğim. Bir bedenin bir başka bedenin mekanına doğru hareket etme arzusunda ortaya çıkan bir sorun olduğunu söylediniz. Mekansal adaletin. Bunu politik bir bağlama yerleştirdiğimizde, yani bedeni burada devlet ve sermaye işbirliği olarak düşündüğümüzde bir bedenin bir başka bedenin mekanını işgal etme hareketinin kolektif bir zor hareketiyle ilişkilendiğini görüyoruz. Haliyle burada mekansal adaleti tesis edebilmek için de bir kolektif karşı duruş hareketi gerekiyor gibi geliyor bana. Bu bağlamda sunumunuzda çok değinmediniz ama Deleuze'ün kaçış çizgisi kavramını savaş makinesiyle ilişkisinde nasıl düşünebiliriz? Savaş makinesini bir devrimci karşı duruş, kolektif devrimci karşı duruş ve şiddete gerektiğinde başvuran bir karşı duruş olarak okuyabilir miyiz? Savaş makinesiyle ilgili olan savaş makinesini kaçış çizgileriyle ilgisinde devlet ve sermayenin işbirliği üzerinden düşünürsek kolektif bir karşı duruş hareketi olarak ama gerektiğinde de şiddete başvuran bir karşı duruş hareketi olarak düşünebilir miyiz? Savaş makinesi kavramını şiddetle ilgisinde, devrimci şiddetle ilgisinde nasıl düşünüyorsunuz?
A bit late to me. I think you started very well by saying that the body is this emergence between state and capital. At the same time, though, by placing it like that, you are alienating it from what the body is, not just otherwise, but also. So to say that the body is state and capital is fine, but then we have to think that state and capital, and we have to go beyond the state, of course, as well, the non-state, the suprastate, and etc. And capital are pretty much all there is. So I think I'll repeat something that I said in the talk, that perhaps the greatest irresistibility of capitalism is our desire for it. And when I say our, I mean, I don't mean each one of us, etc. You know, each one of us will possibly could do without capitalism, although I'm not quite sure that we would know what to do. But let's say that we could imagine, and we do constantly imagine a world, an anti-capitalist world, a world without that. And we think the problem with that, though, is that we position capitalism on that level, state and capital controlling the body. What we don't do is start thinking of capitalism as pretty much as capitalists think, not an ideology, but a body movement, a body gesture. Capitalism is so ingrained, is so sort of underneath the skin of our bodies. And I'm not talking about the kind of the excess of capitalism, the kind of capitalist, monsters we're all fighting against. I'm talking about the beginning of capitalism, or the moments where the traces of capitalism, now how to use this particular capitalism in different ways. So I think the war machine, and that's again the Deleuzean understanding from what I can see, is the use of precisely this unresolved duality between, say, the striated and the smooth, between all these these ways of being not politically neutral, but politically always complicit and co-optable, and use them in a certain way to turn against and from within. The war machine in Deleuze and Guattari is an emergence. It's not something that comes from the outside. It doesn't come from another planet. It is a way of emerging as perhaps as a desire against our desire to follow capitalism as a body force. So this is the moment of withdrawal. Withdrawal is self-withdrawal. Withdrawal is removing oneself from a capitalist desire to carry on the atmosphere. And is that desire a desire of the atmosphere, or is it a desire of individual bodies? The answer is, there is no difference.
Öncelikle çok teşekkür ediyorum anlaşılığınız için. Yine kesiliyor sanırım ara ara. Çok açıkçası yani hukukun nasıl işlediği üzerine, mekanla ilişkisi üzerinden çok zihin açıcı bir sunum oldu bence. Benim şöyle bir sorum olacak, belki biraz açmanızı isteyeceğim bunu. Yaptığınız yani bu kavramsallaştırdığınız haliyle lawscape kavramı biraz şeyi yani kural ve hukuk arasındaki ayrımı silikleştiriyormuş gibi geldi bana. Bu belki hani hukuka neden hukuk dediğimiz meselesiyle ilgili bir sorun yaratabilir mi acaba diye bir soru geldi aklıma. Bunu biraz açmamızı isteyeceğim. Teşekkür ederim.
Are you a lawyer? Are you a lawyer? Are you a legal academic or a lawyer? I'm not a lawyer. You're what? Sorry? You're not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer.
You what? Not.
No.
Sorry, yeah. Okay, because usually this question comes from lawyers or legal academics who say, yeah, but the norm and the law and the rule and legal academics, I think I'm one of those, like boxes. And I always love this question because I think it's a very important question, and thank you for this. It is part of my project is also to, exactly as you say, blur the distinction between what is considered state law or law of oppression, the legitimate violence, etc., and the other law that is, in theory, without sanctions. So the main difference in legal theory is one that law, state law, written law is enforced through sanctions, whereas the other kind of law, social norms, for example, normativity perhaps, and vocabularies, has no sanctions, has no official sanctions. And I would like to challenge that, because I think there are always sanctions, whatever you are and wherever you are, whatever norm you disobey. Because the whole point of sanctions is that you're being excluded. The sanction is you're being excluded from a community. You're being put to prison, or you're being excluded because you get a record, or you're being excluded because you have to pay money or whatever it is, and you come under a certain category, the non-legitimate citizen, for example, or the non-citizen even, etc. And then there's all these other social norms that have exactly the same effect. They ostracize you, they move you away. There are sanctions that move you away from the social group in which you belong. If you start doing things that are not typically legal. So for example, I'm sorry, I keep on using this route, but if some of you start sort of doing like something like that, like something really stupid. I mean, are you alright? But I keep on doing that. But while he talks, for example, I keep on doing that. He said, well, how are you doing? You're an idiot, stop doing that. And he's not going to invite me again, right? No, he's not. Why would you? Unless you like it, I can carry on, but that's weird, and then I'm not going to invite you if you like it. So it's kind of, this is the ostracization. I don't think it's again a fractalization. There's a scale, there's a gamut of different severity. And I'm not saying that it's the same thing to be locked up in prison and to be, excluded from an academic community or whatever it is. Of course not. But at the same time, it really depends on what kind of consequences there are. And I think there are consequences in both cases. And if I may very briefly say that there is an interest in keeping this distinction, and that interest is a state or legitimation of violence distinction, that we have the right to impose sanctions, therefore our law is more important than your law. And your law is simply a social norm, but that's part of the apparatus of the old semantics. The distinction between this law is important, that law is not that important. And I really want to rethink of that distinction.
Teşekkürler sunduğunuz için. Ben bu atmosfer konusunu kafamda tam oturtamadım. Veya birazcık saçma da diye söyleyeyim. Şimdi insanlar bir şekilde bu atmosferin oluşmasına iştirak ediyor. Bir şekilde bu atmosfer insanların iradelerinin de üzerinde bir yerde duruyor. İnsanlar şeyleriyle, talepleriyle, halklarıyla atmosferden beklentileri de var. Peki bu atmosfer insanların taleplerini, halklarını karşılayamadığı durumda ne olacak? Yani bir Matrix'teki gibi bir dijital kararlılığa mı sahip bu atmosfer? Biz sürekli de kararlılığa mı sahip? Teşekkür ederim.
Sorry, I need to revisit yet another term and start challenging that term as well. And that's the concept of will. I went along the concept of will, but now I think it's important to think about it a little more specifically. Atmospheres do not work on the level of will, of human will, operate pre-consciously, operate on the basis of affects. When we realize that there is an atmosphere, quite often we break it. So the feat of an engineered atmosphere is not to go through the will, but to go through a pre-conscious desire to carry on the atmosphere. If the atmosphere is dealing with will, it's lost quite a lot of ground already. So the stability of the atmosphere is not about the will, nor is it so much about satisfying needs. It's about creating needs. Atmospheres are perfect capitalist structures. Capitalism or consumerism does not satisfy needs, it creates needs. You go into the supermarket and you see a toothbrush that can make your teeth, blue. The first time you see that, you think, what nonsense, why would I want that? The second time, you might say, actually, how cool, I'm going to have that. So you discover what you need by being exposed to the offer. So atmospherics come before your desire. They create your desire, and they ride on your desire to carry on desiring the same thing. The stability of the atmosphere, as you said, is not digital, and that's quite lucky, because I think the stability is not very reliable. Atmospheres are not stable structures. They are very fragile. They need constant feeding and constant setting up. So very easily atmospheres collapse. And that's our saving clause. That's our possibility of escape. Because atmospheres change, collapse, become other things. And when they change, when they collapse, they become phenomenologically vibrant. They become understandable phenomenologically. They become obvious to us. they leave their ontology of pre-conscious and they become a phenomenological moment of change. And that's the moment when the stability collapses and when we can go in, we can fold ourselves in and think of the possibility of spatial justice, withdrawal, etc.
Başka soru?
Okay, thanks. And no, I'm not sure this is.
No, it's not.
No? Yeah. Okay. Just to. I hope this is not another lapse into romanticism. But in as far as hope matters to politics, and maybe you can tell us a bit more about how that fits this vision, this post-human vision of politics. Where do you see the most hopeful? Yeah. Sorry. Where do you see the most hopeful chances for withdrawal, or for fruitful, for good withdrawal in the future? So I was curious about that. In your map of world politics, where is this happening?
You're absolutely right. Hope is a feeding mechanism. It's also a feeding mechanism of atmospheres. So we have, yes, we accept hope as something important, and it feeds quite a lot of politics of the left. But at the same time, I really would urge you to understand hope also as a co-opted mechanism, as a mechanism that things are going to get better. Hope is what leads the Hindu caste system. The Hindu caste system is all about you are born into a particular caste. You cannot become anything else but what you were born in. But the hope is that in the next life, when you return, you will be rewarded with a better caste on your way to nirvana, or no, not nirvana. What is it? And that is hope. And that's fine. I mean, it works very well for the system, and it works very well for the caste system, and that's why, despite the fact that it's illegal, it's still there. So I'd be very careful with hope as well. At the same time, and this is it, because okay, I might seem a little bit like, but I'm hopelessly romantic, and this is the moment when I accept all these notions as necessary ruptures, as necessary ways that rupture the continuum of the lawscape or some of the atmospheric, and on which we hook in order to reach something else. So hope is just one mechanism. Another one, strangely, is also ambition. Another one could also all sorts of things. Could be revenge. Could be all sorts of things. Could be anger. So all these emotions, the affective importance of these emotions, has to be taken into consideration as potential ruptures for whatever it is that you're going to do later. But I wish there were a space of hope, or a movement of hope. We're like periscopes. We just focus. We kind of close in whatever square something happens, wherever something happens, wherever a descent or something boiling is taking place. We look at it full of hope, and then something freezes and something goes back. So I think there's also a limited amount of hope that one can have and believe in hope, because then you give up.
Okay, sorry, but there was a second part to the question, in the sense of of course, prognosis is immediately the wrong word,
Yeah.
but where would you expect to see, where's the most promising, the most ambitious forms of withdrawal, and in your mind, where are they going on? Where can we detect them? What square do we turn to?
Currently, it's a bit difficult to be very optimistic about this, and also I cannot do predictions. I've lost that ability when I start reading the tarot cards. But when I'm thinking of the refugee crisis, I thought of it as a way of reconsidering the European project and for Europe to reconsider itself. Now it's not happening. Austria is probably voting for its first, not its first, but its main right-wing president. You know, Cameron is saying no to 3,000, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the UK, is saying no to 3,000 orphans from yeah. I'm hoping to be surprised.
Merhabalar, teşekkür ederim her şeyden önce. Ben bu geri çekilme diye ifade etmiş olduğunuz şeyin aslında bir savaş ilanı olduğunu düşünüyorum. Çünkü bu hukuk manzarası diye ifade etmiş olduğumuz şey sadece Londra'nın göbeğinde ve o sokaklardaki belirli işaretlerde işlemiyor. Dağda, denizde, gökyüzünde kolektif mülkiyetin özel mülkiyete döndürülmüş olduğu, zor aracılığıyla döndürülmüş olduğu her yerde işliyor. Dolayısıyla yazılımın dışına çıkmak, yazılımda bir boşluk bırakmak. Matrix açısından düşünürseniz, yazılımın Matrix, Neo'yu absorbe etmek zorunda ve kendi yazılımına eklenmemek zorunda. Dolayısıyla dışarı doğru kaçış, asketik bir geri çekilme olarak düşünülemez. Aslında sizi sürekli olarak içine almaya çalışan bir yapının kendisinin dışına çıkmak, aynı zamanda o yapının sizi tekrardan absorbe etme çabası. Kimi zaman zor aygıtlarıyla, kimi zaman da arzu diye ifade etmiş olduğunuz bir bilinç formu yaratmak zorunda. Ama günümüz devlet mekanizmasının zor aygıtını, özellikle Orta Doğu ve Mağrip bölgesiyle ilgisine düşünürsek daha fazla kullanmaya başladığını görüyoruz. Bu savaş ilanını yaptıktan sonra geri çekilmek suretiyle elinizdeki malzemeler neler? Tekrardan sizi kapsamaya çalıştığında sizin silahlarınız neler? Bunu merak ediyorum.
Once again, we cannot distinguish between the system and us. So it's not. Can you understand me? Sorry, we're having an us and them moment. Okay. So if the system wants to draw you back, to absorb you back, it means that it hooks on a desire to be hooked, to be brought back. Whether this desire is something that it comes from somewhere else, it is a collective desire, it is a desire, it's a pre-conscious desire, whatever it is, there is always this absorption mechanism that is somehow inherent in us. And we talk about the problems of private property, but most of us, I think, live in private properties. I mean, I'm not talking about landlords, but I'm talking about whether it's rented accommodation or not, you have a door that you can close and you can exclude somebody from coming in. So again, that is the beginning. These are beginnings. If we all lived in kibbutz and in occupied spaces, and I have spoken with these people, and I've tried to understand how. I have so much respect for people who actually do that, and I actually tried to live in a squat for a while. I managed to do that for 2 weeks with a loving tolerance, indeed. But even there, you see limits, you see properties, you see paths, routes. Do not mess with my bathroom routine at 7:30 in the morning. You know I have to go to work at 7:30 in the morning. Don't go into the bathroom while I'm there. This is facetious, this is a silly example, but it is, I don't know, I'm getting a bit, we cannot separate, it's too easy to say the system as us. It's far too easy, and also it's a little disingenuous. It's dishonest. Who are we? I mean, I don't know who you are, but I don't know who you are. And I'm not even a farmer. I can't even think of contemporary proletariat who will not be. I mean, we know all these theories about what is happening with the proletariat now and all that stuff. So, okay, So starting with that, I think there are no other weapons. There are no other arms. We only have the lawscape. We only have this possibility of visibilizing and invisibilizing. There are, what other arms are we going to fight? Who's going to give it to us? It's what it is. It's what we have and what we've been fighting for. The way that one manages to withdraw is the way that one manages to carry on withdrawing, because that's the only method. So you carry on withdrawing, and I thank you for that, because it is a declaration of war. But it's a strange declaration of war. It's a war that is meant to be lost. Because if you win that war, you create another atmosphere. And as soon as you create another atmosphere, you lose spatial justice. So, as soon as you create a party, and I think we might hear Podemos later on, and how Podemos has managed to do something that we want to. So that might be a space of hope and all that stuff. I mean, it has so many issues and it has so many problems. It has so many good intentions. The tools are not new. The tools are the tools of multiplicity. The tools are the tools of the basis, of the horizontality, of they, you know, with a certain enlightened leader and all that stuff, charisma, they're using all the usual political rules. What they're doing is they're visibilizing these things. That's what we have. We have to carry on.
Başka soru? Any other question?
Again, thank you for your presentation and the kind answers. Thanks all for the participation. The next session on the theory of state will start at 1:30.
May I just ask you to join me to thank the translator for